there. Today I'm starting with a photo collage that I had printed at my photo processors. I did this one myself in Photoshop Elements and then put it on an 8 by 10 size document to be printed. My original plan with this was to trim it down and put it on some black cardstock. I was planning to use these flowers across the bottom, and that I'm going to punch with this really old flower punch. Any kind of flower punch would work. I did a couple of them so I could see, about how many I would need. I figured about 5, and I think that's what I'm going to use. The day that I am doing this, that morning I saw a page on Sue Althouse's blog though that I really liked, where she had something that was inset with a very printed border around the edge of more of a, I don't remember if it was a floral, but a floral with a paper with a lot of color around the edge. And I liked that, and I thought that would really set this apart and give it a nice frame. So I've pulled out a few papers here, printed papers. This one's from Bella Boulevard. That's actually a fall paper, but it has really good colors in it. And then this purple and then this darker one. I think it will end up being one of those two that I'll use. I'm going to wait though and decide once I get my flowers and my other things on here as to exactly which background color that I'll be using, but I know I'll be trimming the black cardstock down. Here's my sketch. So I have the photo collage in the middle, and I'm going to put the journaling above it and the title below, and then my flowers down here for embellishment. And whatever I do in the center of the flowers, I'd like to repeat that as embellishments here. And I picked a couple of spots that were sort of empty in my photo collage as a good place to add some additional embellishment up at the top of the page so it wouldn't be quite so linear. Now my lettering, I know I want to use some of this gold paper from Stampin' Up! On the layout, and I thought I might cut out some of my letters out of this and use some of these mistables. For mist colors, I looked at my stash, and this Heidi Swapp Mint Green looks really good with several elements in my photos. Where I'm not sure about are the flowers as to what I'm going to use. I've thought about using plain cardstock and painting them. I've considered lots of different options, and I got to flipping through some papers, and I have this 6x6 pad from Webster's Pages, and the colors in it were really good. They really go well with the photo. Sorry, I keep covering up my photo here. They really go well with it. I pulled out a few of those, so I'm thinking about punching the flowers out of this and maybe adding a little extra ink to them and then covering them with something glossy. I want them to have a lot of shine, because a lot of the artwork that we saw at this particular art show was a lot of metals and a lot of shine to things. So I want to do that. I needed a purple, so I went to my stash and pulled out a purple to go with it. So I'm going to play with the flowers first and decide which ones that I want to use, and then pull the layout together.
So I have my flowers punched, and I'm going to take those and coat them with some additional gloss. I've got some scrap pieces here I can play with. This is glazing medium, and I have some ink, old ink refills from Stampin' Up! These are pigment inks that I really don't need anymore, so I thought this was a good way to use them. Putting a little bit of the glazing medium down on my craft sheet and adding a couple of drops of a yellow color to it. You could use a pigment ink or a dye ink, it doesn't really matter. And I'm just testing this out on a scrap piece of the paper, and you can see it gives it a nice yellow wash to this, as well as adding some glaze. You could use a lot of different products here. Things like Crystal Effects from Stampin' Up! Or the Ranger's Glossy Accents. This is a little bit thinner, so it spreads really well. And then I'm doing some of the red. This rose red color from Stampin' Up! Ends up really red. So red it's just completely covering up my paper, so I'm going to add a little more glazing medium. And it's still pretty dark, but I think I can put this on here and wipe off the excess. And I'll still be able to see the design through it. Now for purple, I didn't have a purple re-inker of any kind. So I just used a marker to add a little bit of ink to my craft sheet, and that gives me a little bit of a purple color. Just trying to darken these as well as adding some gloss to them. Now once they dry, Then I'm taking a smooth round object, in my case my awl that I normally punch holes with, and curling the edges of the petals. They curl really well once they have this bit of glazing medium on them. But I'd like them to have a little more gloss, so I'm using Faber-Castell's Glaze, and again I could have probably used this for the first coat as well. I was just trying some different products, and I'm just going to use this without any color. I just want some clear. And I laid it on my craft sheet. I was afraid to dip out of the bottle. I was afraid that some of the color from the previous coat would come off, but it did not. I kept wiping off my brush, but I didn't get any of the other color off. It sealed in there really good. And this gives the flowers a beautiful finish to them. I was really tickled with how they came out. They're almost like vinyl, and you can see them compared to the original paper. They get a darker look, as well as even this red one. There's a lot of color there, but you can still see some of the design, so it gives it a little more depth. Now for the centers, I have some brads from Stampin' Up. These were an old product called the Build-A-Brad, and you can make them whatever color you want. I think some other companies have done these as well, where you can put something different in the center of your brad, but you could just use a regular brad or a button in the middle. I'm using the Build-A-Brads and just some scrap pieces of cardstock, and I'm gluing those on. And then my covers for these weren't as sticky as they really needed to be, so I'm adding some glossy accents over the top. And I could have just done a layer of that, but since I had the covers, I went ahead and put it on. And between the glossy accents and that cover, it really gets a beautiful finish. I'm going to spray my letters with my Heidi Swapp green mist and let those dry. Alright, now there's the finished flowers. I went ahead and put the brads on each flower rather than trying to take it through all the way through the paper. It'll be easier to position them. And I did a couple of other brads for the top of the layout. And I'm figuring out where my journaling is going to go. My journaling ended up long. So since it's going at the top, I'm going to give it a pocket because it'll be easy to pull out behind the page protector. I just have to figure out where to fit it in. And I figure out that I can have about 4 lines of the journaling showing. So if I measure then how much additional I need, I'm going to use that envelope there to make my pocket. And that's just an extra envelope that I had. I could have made a pocket from scratch, but since I had one, it's fairly easy to cut it down. So I need about 1.5 inch pocket. So I'm going to mark my pocket, my envelope at 1.5 inches up. And I'll go trim that off, and then ever how far over it needs to be with a little bit extra for a seam. So one end is closed, the other end I'm going to close with some tape. And then my journaling will just slide down in there. So the pocket will get glued behind the photographs. So nobody will really know it's there, but it'll be a good stopping point for that paper going down in behind the journaling. And I need to place my flowers and the stuff on the bottom before I glue everything at the top. And I'm measuring for the center of the center flower. It's an 11-inch piece of paper, so 5.5 inches over, and add a couple of glue dots to the back of that. And then the rest of them I can just eyeball them where they go, because they're fitting together pretty snugly there. All right. Got the flowers on, and I'm adding some trim to the top for a tab pull for my journaling. Using one of those brads. And then that'll fit down in the pocket. And all of this will fit behind the photo. Got a little too much trim there. Then I need to center my photo collage, and I do that and I glue the very bottom of the photo collage and then kind of position the top and glue it in place next. Just double checking the side measurements. Make sure everything is fitting good. Okay, that goes down in there nicely. A little bit of extra adhesive so the front doesn't pull up when I'm taking the journaling in and out. And I'll put my letters in place and that other brad. I have some additional words down here at the bottom that I cut out, and I'm using a trick I learned from Nicole McGuirk where you do a shadow in gray, but you cut it the same size as your main print, and you just offset, when you glue it together, you just offset it a little bit so that the gray hangs out on one edge, and it creates a nice depth to the letters.
Okay, here's our completed page with the photo collage and the journaling that's in a little pocket behind so I could have a little bit more journaling. And then I finished up the title, and we have our flowers, and it's placed on this floral background, and of course I cut out the center like I always do so I can use some of that paper, especially that pretty green backing paper, on another project. So here's our sketch. I followed the sketch pretty closely. When I put this design up here, it was really just to balance this one. I didn't have any idea that I would do the tab because I didn't realize my journaling was going to go that long, but it worked out well for that. So anyway, thank you for watching, and you can find more information and the sketch on my blog.